Hello, I'm Rivian Jennings,
I'm Quentin Shelton.
My name is Christian Henderson.
and today we'll be presenting the Wildfire Friend of Foe game that we created for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in Carter's Lake. So in today's presentation, we will go over the following: the project introduction, the relevant technologies used throughout the project, the methodology that we use, the deliverables that we needed to present to the client. Uh, we will go over the first and second levels and also the third level, the learning objectives for the game, a demonstration of the gameplay, the project experiences, and our and possible future works for the project.
The Wildfire Phone. So this application is a learning application. This application is a game that's is ran inside the Unity environment. This game will be displayed using the Holofill display. Blender the application Blender was used to form some of the assets in the game. The game was coded in C sharp, and the we use Visual Studios as the IDE. The game levels will consist of three levels. The first level will be a natural fire. The second one will consist of an improper fire that is put out. And a third level will be another control fire, and in this time it will be affected by wind direction. And the learning objective is displayed in each level.
During our research of the Holofill holographic device, which was required to be used during the project, we discovered that it was a reflective surface device that displays the image from an Android tablet in a mixed reality viewer. The screen reflection is displayed left to right, so the game had to be developed with the left to right orientation for the game to be viewable on the device. During testing, we also determined the actual game displays best with black borders surrounding the game objects.
The methodology for the game, the first time that we met in person to test out the game with the Holofield, it didn't go as expected. There was a couple issues that we ran into, such as the game had a buffer overflow to it, meaning that when we ran the game, certain parts of the game overloaded and it caused the device to need to be reset. Also, we didn't account for the display showing everything backwards. In the second meeting, we were still implementing the learning objectives into the game and also patching some of the issues that was going on in the first milestone, such as performance issues and system response. And in the third milestone, we're cleaning up the issues that was presented in the first and second milestone and making sure that the game is playable for the project sponsor.
The actual deliverables that was required from the start of the game actually changed throughout the project. And at the end, we came to the conclusion that it had to be a game that can perform well on a low performance or device. So the final requirements were that the game had to be Bluetooth playable with a Bluetooth controller on the holographic display. The game had to be only take about 5 to 10 minutes to complete. The game had to have three levels, which Quentin just went over a second ago. But the first level was a non-prescribed fire that's simulated or created by nature. The second level is a non-prescribed fire, also that's done by human accident. And then the final level was an educational level related to prescribed fires about person starting a fire and how wind direction can affect how the fire moves or burns out in the field. And then each level had to have a dialogue that actually introduced educational elements about each type of fire. And the sponsor also wanted us to have the game timeout if it goes unplayed for a certain amount of time, and we set it at 30 seconds.
All right, so the first and second levels are relatively similar. The goal of both is to rotate the camera and the hose around a three-dimensional island and put out fires by aiming at them and firing water. So initially, the ideas for the levels was to have a relatively expansive level that played like an old school light gun game where you would move a reticle around the screen and put out fires that way. Unfortunately, it didn't run well on the tablet and it didn't display well. So the tablet works by having the screen, the reflected screen, blend into the glass sort of by using light to wash it, sorry, I apologize. By washing it out a little bit. So it basically, you don't see the black borders around the level, you just see the floating level in the middle. And that looked much more impressive on the device. So we evolved the levels to be more island-like. So yeah, it plays by use the left joystick to move the camera around the level, and any of the face, but actually any button on the controller will control the water. Players must hold the water stream on a fire for approximately 5 seconds in order to put out the fire. When the fire is put out, the trees will turn black, which represents them going out. So, one of the major changes for the level that isn't seen is the code had to be entirely rewritten due to a relatively late development issue where the original way we were detecting that the water was hitting the trees was very resource intensive and the tablet could not handle it. So we rewrote the code to use an on-trigger enter and exit method to detect if the water was hitting the tree, which took a lot longer than we thought, but had a relatively easy solution once it was realized. Yeah, for the second level, it's relatively the same as the first. You put out trees that are on fire, as well as the campfire. The campfire also needs to go out in order to progress the level to the following level. And in between both these levels is the lessons explaining the concepts of the unprescribed burns and the damages they can cause. Figure out how to move on. So the third level in this is the players are tasked with starting a controlled burn. And when the wind is blowing towards them, the wind is represented by the arrow, and it rotates around in a 360-degree circle. So when it is towards them, facing south, or not south, down, the player will hit the action button or one of the face buttons to activate the fire. Because when starting a controlled burn, you want it to burn towards you, not away, because if it burns away, it will start a runaway fire. So you'll do this 3 times, each time with the arrow rotating at a progressively faster speed. When the player messes up and presses it at the wrong time, it will just reset the level to allow them to have a second chance at lighting the fire. And because I was afraid that if a kid plays the game, they'd get frustrated if they kept messing up and having to restart the whole activity. So, yeah.
Learning objectives. So the learning objectives is basically during each level, the User will be met with dialogue explaining to them what's the objective for each level. Also, the user will be met with learning objectives when starting the game. For instance, when they're starting the game, they'll be met with that the game is for educational purposes, a disclaimer. Um, Along with that, they will be met with dialogue in between levels, just letting them know that they're at level 1, level 2, and what's the objectives for them. When they're playing the game on tablet, the game will be reverse text versus when it's on the holofield device where it'll be regular text.
All right, so our workloads on the project were all relatively significant. I worked primarily on the first and second level, as well as provided support on the third level, and I combined and edited the working parts into one coherent project. Quentin focused primarily on the dialogue system and the documentation for the project, and Rivian focused primarily on the main menu and the level 3. And now I will show you a demonstration of the project. Second.
Oh,
All right. Is it showing up?
yes.
All right, perfect. All right, so I apologize in advance if it's loud. The volume is fine on a tablet when I test it, but unfortunately this is not a tablet. Let me full screen that. Oops. All right, so as you can see, the text is reversed on this because it reflects onto the tablet, and obviously when it reflects, it reverses itself back. There is background ambiance music. It may be a little loud here. So the player will just press any of the face buttons to continue, and it will display the lesson for them. We put it in short bits where the player gets at least one sentence per thing. The player can move it forward faster if they read it at faster speed by pressing the action button again. And unfortunately, I can't read it when it's backwards. So this one is the instructions on how to put out the fires. I wanted the player to know how to do that. So you aim at the fire and fire for 5 seconds, and the tree will turn black. As you could also see, when the level started, the lightning bolt struck and the fires all broke out. And so you rotate the camera around the island and it displays in a 3D fashion. And by pressing any of the face buttons, you can start putting out the fires. So when you finish, it'll progress to the next set of lessons about that sort of a fire. The next is the man-made fire of the improperly put out campfire. All right, so it's the same as before. But in addition to the trees, you also have to put out this campfire to prevent any further spread. And when that's done, it'll turn black as well and progress to the next set of dialogue. So the next ones are the level 3. This is where you must put out the fires when it is rotated towards you, and which is the wind. So press the action button when the arrow is facing downwards. So the first time it's relatively easy, and then the fire will start up. This time it's a little faster. And one last time. And if the player is to mess up, it'll give them another free chance by immediately putting it south or downwards. And this is so little children won't get as upset. I can't even do it. And then when the game is over, it resets back to the home screen. But that's not all. In levels, it will reset after 30 seconds, which I will display since it was a part of the project requirements. As long as no buttons are hit for 30 seconds, it will reset. I apologize about that. It was necessary though. And that. Now let's go back to, and we need to pull back up the presentation. Where'd that go?
Got it.
So now we will. Now I'll talk about the project experiences. So we faced numerous challenges while working on this project. The first major issue that we had was the project sharing method we had was using Plastic SCM, which is a built-in Unity, what's the word? Unity package that allows you to share a project with another person as long as they are in the same group. The problem with this is it will overwrite previous files if you accidentally include it with your new files that you uploaded. This meant we lost quite a bit of work due to this. And after this happened a few times, we decided we would go the old-fashioned route of zipping the file and sending it to one another, which was a less headache-inducing method. The second major issue was distance. As an online student, it is hard to find the time to travel to Kennesaw's campus. It's over an hour drive for me. So we weren't able to test it on the actual holofill device as often as we had liked. I had a Kindle Fire tablet, which we used for testing. It is relatively similar in specifications as the tablet that the holofill includes. So we were using that to test it. And by far the biggest issue was the limitations of the tablet itself. As I mentioned earlier, we had to completely rewrite the code for the first and second levels due to the problems we had with it, where it was just too resource demanding of the tablet. It worked great on PC, but it did not work well on the actual physical tablet. So yeah, we had to use other detection methods to detect it other than the normal on-trigger stay that we were initially using. And what we learned from this all is how to work within a system's abilities. And so we learned how to scale something back that wouldn't normally run on a device and get it to run in some fashion.
Yeah, there was a lot of elements of the project we pretty much had to scrap, and would have been nice to run, but yes, we learned that you have to take what you are presented and do the best you can. So the future work and potential improvements we would suggest is improving the hardware, which was an option since the hardware device is actually a additional part that can be added or disconnected. It's just a standard Android tablet, and they could probably get like a name brand device that performs better. Or we can make there's other methods that Christian, you suggested another option.
Yeah. So one potential solution is, so the tablet that it uses is, I think, either 8 inches or 10 inches. What they could do is replace it with a small 8 or 10 inch screen, like a monitor, and then you could attach a computer via a HDMI to it, or mini HDMI. This would allow you to then use laptop or computer as your base device to display things on there, and you could have a much more robust um, levels. It could be more visually impressive. You could do more demanding things with it.
Yeah, we
Your
were thinking like,
limitations would be a lot less.
yeah,
Sorry.
that's all right, because we were thinking like additional levels. Some of the concepts that couldn't get across fully would have been better to get across with better performance from the device. Some of the things that they even the original deliverables wasn't really possible with what the limitations were on the device itself. Some of the elements, like he wanted complete wind interaction with the grass, and um, he wanted to start fires interactively, and those weren't as, it just wasn't possible with what the limitations were. But it was it could be done in future devices if they improve the device itself. Um, what else could have been improved?
Um, Along with making a dialogue system, I had to make the dialogue system um with an idea of like the system with system limitations, like with the system, because we had system limitations, I can add as many effects, or and I can add pictures and other things to the cutscenes as I would want to, because of the system limitations to it. Along with that, in the future, we will hope that there's a better way of uploading and installing the file on other devices if needed, instead of doing the APK, maybe putting the application onto the Google Play Store or any other Android marketplace.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much their project, and it's complete enough to present. Um, so, and this was the Wildfire project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Thank you very much.